Jericho. Natufians, who are believed to have established Tel Abu Huraira, are also believed to have settled a site just over 300 miles southwest next to Tel Es Sultan. The settlement exists to this day and is called Jericho, but we do believe that there were a couple of times when Jericho was abandoned. So we do not believe that it has been continuously occupied. As a side note, the word tel, which we can see often in these place names, is a Hebrew word for hill or a mound. The guess is that people were setting up home in this area, which was a fertile natural oasis with spring waters, so it was supportive of a healthy human lifestyle, and that they were doing this by 9000 BCE, evidenced by stone tools excavated in the area. So its emergence may be quite contemporary to Tel Abu Huraira. Certainly, we can find evidence of mud brick dwellings that date back as far as 8500 BCE. But the fundamental difference between Jericho and Çatalhöyük is that the buildings were circular and with domed roofs. This demonstrates that even though Natufian cultured people are thought to be responsible for the emergence of the individual settlements, that the approach to building the settlement differed. There was obviously no preferred theoretical blueprint for how to construct a village, and it appeared that it was just down to how those individuals there and then felt about their own village and how it should be built. There certainly is evidence of Jericho following the natural progressions of early village life. So fauna and flora domestication is believed to have happened quickly, and stone tool creation as well as cloth weaving was definitely taking place. The people of Jericho seem to have had another thing in common with the people of Çatalhöyük, in that it appears that they were acquiring obsidian, and it could have been coming from the same areas of eastern modern Turkey. This would point strongly towards there being a trade network emerging. It is also possible that merchants were acquiring the precious obsidian and travelling to establish villages to trade the obsidian for anything that the village may have. Maybe woven clothes, maybe a portion of the crop harvest surplus, maybe animals. It was around the year 8000 BCE that something quite unusual and unexplained happened at Jericho. The people of the village deemed it necessary to begin construction around the circumference of their village of a 2-metre thick wall. The wall is referenced in the Hebrew Bible, as the book of Joshua tells the story of how the Israelites destroyed the wall of Jericho during their conquest of the Canaanites. The wall itself was complemented by the contemporary construction of a tower, which is believed to have stood at around 8 metres in height. So why were the walls of Jericho and the Tower of Jericho constructed? Well, I sometimes like convenient and reasonable explanations, and it would be reasonable to assume that nomadic peoples were still travelling around the lands of the Levant, as proven by the existence of obsidian traders. Should you be living as nomads, you would probably come across other nomadic groups who would tell you of this amazing village of perhaps 2,000 or 3,000 people enjoying the good life at their settlement at the oasis. Should the resources of the nomads be short in supply, with nothing to trade, you may find that the only option is to amalgamate your tribes and launch a raid for food. and whatever else you could get your hands on. Çatalhöyük, with its back-to-back houses and roof entrances, may have been somewhat easier to defend due to its layout, but Jericho, with its circular houses, may have been easier to infiltrate, so the wall and the tower may have been a necessity to protect the health and wealth of the village. Other explanations suggest that the wall was built to protect the village from floods. Whilst this might be possible and feasible, this would not necessarily explain the reason for the construction of the tower, which would seem reasonable if the wall was built for the purpose of defending the village from large groups of nomadic raiders. It would be great if you had the benefit of a larger range of sight from the tower if you were expecting raiders. The wall was built using mud bricks, but the tower was built using undressed stones. By undressed, we mean that the stones did not undergo any special shaping or surface preparation prior to being added to the construction. So if the tower was not defensive, then what would it be? Some experts have suggested that it had more of a spiritual or ceremonial purpose and that it could have been used as a means for worshipping the sun. Others have suggested that it could have been a symbol of subliminal power, encouraging those who lived under its shadow to work for the good of the community. Personally, I like the defensive construction of the wall and tower because it makes convenient sense. There is little evidence in these early villages of a political or royal hierarchy, so I'm leaning away from the community symbol for the tower. Those that argue against the wall being defensive against raiders cite the fact that there is no evidence of a skirmish, so then we would be pushed towards the flood defence theory. Whatever the reasons, it's an intensely interesting debate. One final thing that I will mention about Jericho's earliest years is the emergence of plastered human skulls. The first plastered skulls at Jericho were excavated around the 1950s, but it wasn't until the available of CT scanning that we could find out more about the skulls. Computed tomography scanning, CT scanning, or CAT scanning, to give it all of its different names, is a method of complex X-ray scanning which enables us to see beyond the surface of an object without destroying the surface, something we are reluctant to do with such a precious object such as the plastered skulls, which is thousands of years old. What we have discovered is that the skull was initially stuffed with soil before a plastered surface was created, and valued marine shells were placed on the skull as artificial eyes. Some have speculated that the skulls were prizes of defeated opponents' heads. However, it does appear that the plastered skulls directly relate to the bodies that had been buried under the floors of dwellings. We mentioned the underfloor burial practice earlier in the podcast at Çatalhöyük. This would strongly suggest that the skulls being decorated belonged to close and celebrated individuals who were respected members of their homes and maybe their entire village. In some cases, the shells used for the eyes would have had to have been sourced from a distance away, so they could have been brought to the village by nomadic merchants. Since the early discoveries made at Jericho, we have uncovered skulls at other places, including Anatolia, that date as far back as 7,500 BCE. So some have suggested that worshipping the spirit of ancestors may have been a strongly practiced style of religion. Next time, we're going to take a look at one of the next technological advances of these sedentary farming societies, who were about to discover the wonder of metals.